He needed me that night. You would have understood if you trusted me, she said, after spending the night at her ex's apartment on our anniversary. I didn't respond, just went to the bedroom and started packing. Found the ring box I'd hidden in my drawer, put it in my pocket. She saw it from the doorway, went pale. I walked past her and left. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the ceramic vase she bought from that artisan market in South End against the wall. I didn't demand to check her phone. When you reach a certain level of clarity, rage just feels inefficient. It's like watching a building collapse in slow motion. You don't fight physics, you just step out of the way. It was 8:00 a.m. on a Saturday morning in Charlotte. My girlfriend of 4.5 years, Jessica, had just walked through the front door of our apartment in South End. We'd been living together for 2 years, splitting bills, making plans. 6 months ago, we'd started talking seriously about buying a house. 3 weeks ago, she'd mentioned wanting kids in the next year or two. Last night was supposed to be the night everything changed. She looked wrecked, but not, I just spent the night at a hospital saving a life. Wrecked. She looked, I stayed up until 4 a.m., drinking cheap wine and trauma bonding, wrecked. There's a difference in the way exhaustion sits on someone's face. One is noble fatigue. The other is the hangover of poor choices. She dropped her keys on the console table we'd picked out together at a furniture store in Ballantyne. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silent apartment. I was sitting on the couch, dressed in the same clothes I had worn the night before, a crisp button-down and khakis. The same clothes I'd planned to wear to dinner at Morton's. The same clothes I'd hoped she'd compliment me on when I got down on one knee. I hadn't slept. "Oh, you're awake," she said, kicking off her boots. The same boots I'd bought her for Christmas last year. She rubbed her temples, feigning a headache to buy sympathy. God, what a nightmare. I am exhausted. In construction, we have a saying. The foundation tells you everything you need to know about the building. If the foundation is compromised, it doesn't matter how pretty the facade is. The whole structure is doomed. Jessica's foundation had been showing cracks for months, but I'd been too invested in the blueprint to notice. She walked past me toward the kitchen, expecting me to follow her like a loyal dog, expecting me to ask if she was okay, expecting me to make her coffee and absorb her crisis like I always did. When I didn't move, she paused and turned around. The air shifted. She saw the shirt. She saw the unlit candles on the dining table behind me. She saw the unopened bottle of vintage Cabernet, a $150 bottle sitting next to 2 empty, albeit pristine glasses. "Andrew, please," she sighed, her voice dripping with preemptive annoyance. "Don't do this. Don't start." "Start what?" I asked. My voice was frighteningly calm. I've developed that tone over years of managing construction crews. When you're dealing with million-dollar projects and someone's about to make a costly mistake, you don't yell. You speak quietly, and they listen harder. The silent treatment thing. Cole was in a really bad place, okay? He was spiraling. He called me in a panic. If I hadn't gone over there, I don't know what he would have done. Cole, her ex-boyfriend, their broken bird. She dated him for 2 turbulent years before me, back when she thought chaos was passion and instability was artistic depth. The guy who was an aspiring creative entrepreneur at 25 and remains a DoorDash driver with unrealistic dreams at 30. He made short films that nobody watched and wrote songs that nobody heard, funding his artistic vision with delivery tips and whatever sympathy money he could extract from old girlfriends. For 4.5 years, I had been the rock, the stable construction project manager who paid most of the bills, planned our vacations, and fixed everything that broke in our shared life. Cole was the crisis, the chaotic artist who only called when he was broke, high, lonely, or all three. He was the human equivalent of a leaky roof, always needing repair, never actually fixed. "It was our anniversary, Jessica," I said. The words came out steady, matter of fact. "We had reservations at Morton's. I booked that table 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, when I was still planning a future with her. 6 weeks ago, when I was researching rings and calculating monthly payments. 6 weeks ago, when I believed that consistency and reliability meant something to her." She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. It was such a casual dismissal of everything we'd built together that I felt something fundamental shift inside my chest, like a load-bearing wall finally giving way. I know, and I feel bad about the dinner. I do, but this was a life or death situation, Andrew. He was talking about ending it. What kind of person would I be if I ignored that because of a dinner reservation? There it was, the pivot. She was trying to make me the villain for caring about our milestone, for caring about the house we were supposed to start looking at next month, for caring about the conversation we'd had about starting a family. She was reframing my disappointment as selfishness, my hurt as petty jealousy. This is a technique I recognize from dealing with difficult subcontractors. When they mess up, they immediately try to make you the problem for holding them accountable. They question your character instead of addressing their failure. It's manipulation 101. So, he was suicidal? I asked. Yes, he was hysterical. Did you call 911? She froze. For just a moment, her confident narrative stumbled. What? If he was an immediate threat to himself, you should have called emergency services. Professionals trained to handle mental health crises. Did you call them? No, Andrew, I didn't call the cops on him. He just needed someone to talk to. He needed to not be alone. The logic was already crumbling. If someone is truly suicidal, you call for help. You don't abandon your anniversary dinner to play amateur therapist. You don't enable their emotional dependence by rushing over every time they claim to be in crisis. I stood up and walked toward her slowly. In construction, you learn to read stress points before they fail. Jessica was showing all the signs of a structure under load. The slight tremor in her hands, the defensive posture, the way her story kept shifting to find stable ground. As I got closer, the smell hit me. It wasn't the antiseptic smell of a crisis center or a hospital waiting room. It was distinct. Stale vape smoke, the sour tang of spilled craft beer, and underneath it all, the aggressive woody scent of Tom Ford cologne, Cole's signature scent. I recognized it from years of Jessica coming home with traces of their innocent coffee meetings. You smell like a dive bar, I stated. Not an accusation, just an observation. A fact to be added to the growing pile of evidence. Her face flushed a deep, guilty crimson. The color started at her neck and crept up to her cheeks like spilled paint spreading across concrete. I've seen that exact reaction from subcontractors caught cutting corners. The moment they realize their lie isn't going to hold up under scrutiny. After he calmed down, we had a drink to settle his nerves. We fell asleep watching a movie on the couch. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. The go-to defense of someone who knows exactly what happened and hopes you'll be stupid enough to believe their version. In my line of work, when someone says nothing happened to explain why a wall is crooked or a foundation is cracked, you can bet your ass something very much happened. You missed our anniversary to get drunk with your ex-boyfriend because he was lonely, I said. Each word came out measured, like I was reading specifications from a blueprint. He needed me, she shouted, her voice cracking like timber under stress. God, you are so insecure. You can't handle that I care about people. You would have understood if you actually trusted me instead of being so jealous. That sentence broke something inside me, not my heart. That had been developing hairline fractures for months. This was deeper. This was the moment when the last load-bearing beam of our relationship finally snapped. You would have understood if you trusted me. The gaslighting was so pure, so textbook, that I almost had to admire the craftsmanship. She was trying to make my reasonable expectation of fidelity into a character flaw. She was rewriting the narrative so that her betrayal became my failure to trust. It was like blaming the building inspector for condemning a structure instead of the contractor who built it wrong. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the smear of mascara she hadn't washed off, probably because she'd been too drunk or too guilty to face herself in a mirror. I saw the defensiveness in her posture, shoulders up, arms crossed, chin jutted out like she was preparing for battle. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even embarrassed. She felt entitled to my patience, entitled to my stability, while she got her emotional fix from the chaos of her past. She wanted to play nurse to a man who refused to grow up, and she wanted me to foot the bill for the apartment she came home to, for the future we'd planned together, for the ring that was currently burning a hole in my sock drawer. I didn't say another word. I turned around, walked past her, and headed toward the bedroom we'd shared for 2 years. The bedroom where we'd talked about our future, where she'd shown me Pinterest boards of wedding dresses, where she'd fallen asleep in my arms just last week while we watched House Hunters and debated neighborhoods we might want to live in. Andrew, where are you going? Are you walking away from me? She followed me, her voice rising in pitch like a siren winding up. The same voice that used to comfort me after long days on job sites, now grating against my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. I pulled my duffel bag out from the top shelf of the closet. It was the same bag I'd used for weekend work trips, for camping adventures we'd taken together in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I threw it on the bed and unzipped it with more force than necessary. "Oh my God, you have got to be kidding me," she laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound that echoed off the walls. "You're packing because I helped a friend? You are being so dramatic right now." Dramatic. Helping a friend. The revisionist history was happening in real time. Within minutes, her affair had become charity work, and my reasonable response had become theatrical overreaction. I walked to the dresser we'd bought together at IKEA on a Saturday afternoon 8 months ago. We'd spent the whole day assembling furniture, drinking beer, and talking about how we were finally becoming real adults. I opened the sock drawer, the same drawer where I kept my work gloves and safety glasses. "Andrew, stop it! Talk to me!" I reached into the back of the drawer, under the heavy wool socks I used for winter construction sites. My fingers brushed against the cool, fuzzy velvet that had been hiding there for 3 weeks. I pulled out the box. It was a small navy blue box from a jeweler in Asheville, 3 hours away. Inside was a platinum band with a 2.2-carat solitaire diamond that had cost me 8 months of careful saving. I had driven to that specific jeweler because they specialized in ethical sourcing. I had researched cut quality and clarity grades. I had planned exactly how I was going to propose, during dessert at Morton's, after we'd shared the wines already chosen, after I had built up the courage to tell her that she was the foundation I wanted to build my life on. I turned around. Jessica was standing in the bedroom doorway, hands on her hips, ready to launch into another speech about my lack of empathy, my inability to understand that sometimes people need help, my failure to be the supportive boyfriend she deserved. Then she looked at my hand. Her mouth was open mid-sentence, but the sound died in her throat like a motor cutting out. Her eyes went wide, pupils dilating as if she'd just walked from bright sunlight into a dark room. Her face didn't just pale, it went gray, the color of concrete before it's properly cured. Her hands dropped from her hips to her sides, limp and lifeless. The arrogance vanished like smoke, replaced by a sudden, horrific clarity. She looked at the box, then she looked at the duffel bag. Then she looked at me. The math was finally computing in her head. Anniversary dinner, expensive wine, nervous energy she'd probably attributed to work stress. The way I'd been checking my phone all week, making mysterious calls to confirm reservations. "Andrew," she whispered. The word came out like a choke, like she was trying to breathe underwater. Were you?" I didn't answer. I didn't open the box to show her the ring she'd lost. She didn't deserve to see the sparkle. Didn't deserve to know exactly how much thought and money and hope I'd invested in a future she'd just incinerated. I simply slipped the box into my pocket, feeling its weight against my leg like a small, expensive anchor. I turned back to the bed and started throwing clothes into the duffel bag. 3 days' worth of work shirts, jeans, and underwear. My laptop and charger. Toiletries from the bathroom we'd shared, where her cosmetics took up 3/4 of the counter space. "No, no, no, no," she started stammering, stepping into the room. She reached out to grab my arm, her fingernails freshly manicured, and painted a deep red that suddenly looked like blood. "Andrew, wait, you were going to propose last night." It wasn't a question. It was a realization hitting her like a sledgehammer to the chest. I sidestepped her reach like avoiding a falling beam on a construction site. Quick, efficient, no wasted motion. I grabbed the handle of my duffel bag, feeling the weight of my condensed life pulling at my shoulder. "Andrew, please stop. Let's talk about this." She was panicking now, blocking the path to the door like a desperate foreman trying to stop an OSHA inspector from entering a dangerous site. Tears were instantly welling up in her eyes. Real tears this time, not the crocodile tears she'd deployed during our argument. These were tears of loss, not manipulation. Tears of consequences finally arriving at her doorstep. I didn't know. If I had known, I never would have picked up the phone. I would have told Cole to fuck off. I stopped for 1 second, just long enough to look her in the eye. In that moment, I saw everything clearly. This wasn't about Cole, wasn't about one night, wasn't about a single bad decision. This was about priorities. This was about the fact that even after 4.5 years together, even after living together for 2 years, even after talking about marriage and kids and buying a house, I still ranked second to a man who called her when he needed an emotional band-aid. "That's the problem, Jessica," I said softly, my voice steady as a plumb line. "You shouldn't have needed a ring to tell him that." The words hit her like a wrecking ball. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. The woman who used to make coffee in my old Carhartt t-shirt on Sunday mornings. The woman who would drive to job sites to bring me lunch when I was working overtime. The woman who used to curl up against me on the couch and say she felt safest when she was with me. But that woman had made a choice, and she'd chosen chaos over stability, drama over peace, the past over the future. I moved past her. She tried to grab the duffel bag handle, her fingernails scraping against the fabric like claws on concrete, but I pulled it away. I walked down the hallway we'd painted together last spring, past the photos we'd hung of our trips to the mountains, past the life we'd built one small decision at a time. "You can't just leave. We live together," she called after me, her voice breaking like poorly mixed mortar. "Andrew, I love you." Those 3 words stopped me for half a second. Words I'd heard hundreds of times before. Words that used to fill me with warmth and certainty. Now they just sounded hollow, like an echo in an empty building. I opened the front door and stepped into the cool Charlotte morning. Behind me, I heard her take a shaky breath. "Andrew!" she screamed, a guttural sound that probably woke Mrs. Thompson next door and every other neighbor in our complex. It was the sound of someone watching their safety net disappear, their backup plan walking out the door. I stepped out, closed the door gently behind me, and listened to the lock click into place. The finality of that small sound was more satisfying than any argument could have been. I walked down the stairs, each step feeling lighter than the last. Got into my F-150, the same truck I'd driven to work every day for 3 years, the same truck Jessica had always said was too big for city driving. I put the duffel bag on the passenger seat and started the engine. I didn't turn on the radio, I just drove in silence, feeling like I'd just walked out of a building that had been slowly filling with toxic gas. The morning air felt cleaner somehow, like I could breathe deeper than I had in months. The first 48 hours were a masterclass in modern digital harassment. I had checked into a Hampton Inn about 20 minutes from my job site in Concord. It wasn't glamorous, generic beige walls, industrial carpet, a view of the parking lot, but it was quiet. More importantly, it was mine. No shared space, no compromise, no walking on eggshells around someone else's emotions. I sat on the stiff hotel bed, staring at my phone as it vibrated across the nightstand like an angry insect. The screen lit up repeatedly, dancing toward the edge of the table with each incoming message. Jessica, 15 missed calls. Jessica, 18 text messages. I watched the numbers climb like a project cost overrun, spiraling out of control. Each notification was another reminder of why I'd left. This wasn't grief. This was a desperate attempt to regain control of a situation that had slipped away from her. The texts followed a predictable, almost clinical progression. I'd seen this pattern before, with difficult clients who couldn't accept that their project was over budget and behind schedule. First denial, then bargaining, then anger, then more bargaining. It was the 5 stages of grief compressed into digital form. Phase 1, denial and bargaining. "Baby, please pick up. I'm shaking. I can't breathe. You're scaring me. I'm throwing out all of Cole's stuff." I blocked his number. "I'll show you. Just come home. We can fix this." Couples go through rough patches. We don't throw away 4.5 years over one misunderstanding. The desperation was palpable, even through text. She was trying to rebuild a bridge I'd already dynamited. The problem wasn't Cole's stuff in our apartment. It was Cole's access to her emotional emergency line. The problem wasn't his number in her phone. It was the fact that when he called, she answered. Phase 2, anger. "You're being incredibly immature, so you're just going to ghost me after everything I did for you? That's cowardice, Andrew. You clearly never loved me if you can walk away this easily. You were just looking for an excuse." There it was, the revisionist history where I became the villain, where 4.5 years of paying most of the bills, planning our future, and being emotionally available became everything she did for me. where my reasonable response to her betrayal became cowardice and immaturity. Phase 3. The Flying Monkeys. By Sunday afternoon, she had deployed the troops. Her best friend Danielle, a woman who had cheated on her own husband and somehow considered herself a relationship expert, started blowing up my phone. I made the mistake of answering one call, mostly because I needed to know if Jessica was going to do something destructive to our shared belongings. "Andrew, you need to stop this performative cruelty," Danielle snapped before I could even say hello. Her voice was shrill and indignant, like a contractor complaining about safety regulations. "She is on the floor, Andrew, on the floor, crying her eyes out. You can't just dangle an engagement ring in her face and then abandon her. That is psychological abuse." I was sitting by the hotel window, watching traffic crawl along I-277 like ants following a predetermined path. I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching a movie of my own life from a comfortable distance. "I didn't dangle it," I said calmly, my voice as level as a construction laser. "I packed it. It belongs to me, just like the rent money she's going to need next month." "You are heartless," Danielle spat. "She made a mistake. She was trying to be a good friend." "Danielle," I cut in, my voice dropping to that quiet tone that makes people listen harder. "She came home smelling like his cologne and stale beer. She didn't save a life. She went on a date. Tell Jessica she has until the end of the month to figure out the lease. I'll pay my half until then. After that, she's on her own." I hung up and blocked Danielle's number. Then I blocked Jessica's sister. Then I muted the notifications for our mutual friends. Each block was like sealing another crack in a foundation. Necessary maintenance to prevent further structural damage. I went to work on Monday like a ghost walking through my old life. I focused entirely on blueprints and construction schedules. There was something meditative about building things that would last longer than promises, structures that were governed by physics instead of emotions. When you're dealing with betrayal, math becomes your friend. Concrete doesn't lie. Steel doesn't gaslight you. A foundation either holds or it doesn't. By Wednesday, the silence from my end seemed to have broken something in Jessica. The text stopped being aggressive and started becoming pathetic. The anger phase had collapsed into bargaining again, but with more desperation this time. "I miss you. The apartment is so quiet. I found your Carhartt jacket in the closet. It smells like you. I'm sleeping in it." I didn't reply. I didn't feel the urge to. The image of her face when she saw the ring box was burned into my retina like looking directly at an arc welder. It was the closure I didn't know I needed. It proved that she understood the magnitude of her loss. Words would just dilute that perfect moment of clarity. About 3 weeks later, I had to swing by the apartment to get the rest of my belongings. I timed it for a Tuesday morning when I knew she had a team meeting at her event planning company. The apartment was a wreck. It looked like a college dorm during finals week. Takeout containers on the coffee table, a pile of laundry on the sofa we'd picked out together. It was the physical manifestation of her internal state. Chaos without my stabilizing influence. I packed my power tools, my coffee maker, and the rest of my clothes. As I was loading the last box into my truck, my neighbor Mrs. Thompson walked by with her golden retriever, Bailey. "Andrew," she waved, shuffling over with the careful steps of someone who'd seen enough drama to recognize it from a distance. "I haven't seen you around. Is everything all right? Jessica has had company quite a bit lately." I paused in loading the box, setting it down gently in the truck bed. "I moved out, Mrs. Thompson. We broke up." She looked conspiratorial, glancing around like she was about to share classified information. "Oh, I assumed as much. That young man with the loud motorcycle. He's been parking in your spot, plays music at all hours. I was going to complain to the leasing office, but I didn't want to cause trouble for you." Cole. Of course. It hadn't even been a month, and the parasite had already attached itself to its new host. The cycle was complete. Jessica had traded security for chaos, and now she was living with the consequences. I felt a wave of nausea, followed quickly by relief. It wasn't my problem anymore. "Feel free to complain, Mrs. Thompson." I smiled, genuinely amused. "I'm off the lease as of the 1st. It's not my spot anymore." Over the next few months, I heard the rest of the story through the grapevine. You know how it is. You try to cut ties, but mutual friends get drunk and talk. Apparently, once I was out of the picture, Jessica tried to lean on Cole for the emotional and financial stability I had provided. She expected him to step up, to become the man she needed. She thought their connection had been stifled by my presence, and now they could finally build something real. The reality check hit her like a concrete mixer truck. Cole didn't want a girlfriend. He wanted a fan. He didn't want to pay half the rent. He wanted a place to crash between gigs that didn't exist. Within 2 months, he had borrowed $2,800 from her for new recording equipment and a motorcycle upgrade. He started bringing his creative friends over to the apartment, our former sanctuary, turning it into a crash pad for aspiring artists and full-time losers. When she asked him to contribute to bills or clean up after himself, he used the exact same lines on her that he'd probably used on every woman who'd ever tried to domesticate him. "You're stifling my creativity. You're too uptight. Stop acting like my mom." The irony was so rich it could have funded a construction project. Meanwhile, I threw myself into rebuilding. If you've never rebuilt a life from the ground up, let me tell you, it's addictive. The first month is hell. The second is hard work. But by the third, you realize how much dead weight you were actually carrying. I wasn't just free of Jessica. I was free of the anxiety she masked as passion, free of the constant need to manage her emotions and crises. I got a promotion to senior project manager, which came with a $10,000 raise. I sold the engagement ring and used the money to buy a Harley-Davidson Street Glide, the bike Jessica had always said was too dangerous. I started dating Monica, a nurse practitioner I met at a climbing gym. She was different, stable. When Monica had a bad day at the clinic, she didn't create drama or disappear. She told me about it, we ordered pizza, and we watched movies. No games, no tests, no emotional emergencies. Just two adults building something solid. 6 months after I left, I ran into Jessica at a furniture store in South Park. She looked diminished, wearing old yoga pants and a stained hoodie. When she saw me testing out a new sectional, her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, hope, desperation. She tried to apologize, tried to explain how Cole had used her, tried to convince me that she'd grown and learned. She wanted to start over. "I don't hate you, Jessica," I told her calmly. "But we aren't starting over. You chose chaos. I chose peace. I'm not trading my peace to fix your mistakes." She mentioned the ring, said I couldn't just turn love off like a switch. "I didn't turn it off," I said. "You killed it. The ring was just metal after that. I sold it and bought a motorcycle. In a way, you did help me build my future, just not the one you wanted." I walked away toward my bike, toward Monica, toward a life that finally belonged to me. Behind me was only silence, and it was beautiful. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.